Hello and welcome. My name is Tadej Blažič and I'm a 3D designer from Slovenia. Today we start our journey of cute character creation. In these lessons we'll learn how to conceptualize cute characters, create an environment that complements our character, hair animation and how to troubleshoot hair animation, as well as texturing, hair material creation and hair lighting techniques. I'm using the 2.7 shortcut scheme, though I will have annotations for different Blender shortcuts. Everything is made to accommodate beginners and help understand the procedures needed for satisfying hair and character animations. So let's get into our first part, character concept creation. We will be making a character animation for this course, which will be a beehive, or rather a bee exiting a beehive. Now, we will start a bit backwards. We will first start with the character and set up everything with the character and then create the environment around it. For our character creation, it's going to be a simple bee, but the principles that we will learn are easily applicable to any other situation. Now, we will start with the body. This is usually the way I approach things, I approach design. When I think about the bodies, I think about different structures. In this case, we will be adding a couple of objects just to be sure. I usually go in threes. So if I have a cube, this is going to be, let's say, my mid-position body. So this is the middle position. Now, if I want a character that's a bit, let's say, slanky or whatever is associated with that character, I try to follow it with the base form, with the form of the primitive. If I want someone who is a bit slanky, I just duplicate the cube and I'm going to scale it on the X and Y axes, like this. Now, I usually raise the character up. So basically what happens, I get this. These do not necessarily represent directly the character you are making. You are just selecting the base shape or the base form. When I do these differentiations, I try to think about the character that I will be creating in the future. This is maybe like a smaller, like a more innocent character, but at the same time, depending on the facial expressions, it can also be a grumpier character, it can be a character that's angry or irritated. And the same goes for the slanky type. So it can be a character that's like irritated or angry or has some sort of grudge, or it can be a more serious character. Again, there are some exceptions. For example, you would like to make like a fried potato chip. You could turn it to be something that's like cute. But again, it's not going to have the innocence that a small cube can have. And on the other side, we can then start with our round shapes. So round shapes follow about the same philosophy as the cube. Depends on how you scale them. So you can have, again, a slankier sphere. This works in some cases and in others does not. We have our slanky type, our cube. We have our sphere over here, which is going to be, let's say, our rounder type of character. Now we can basically start developing these shapes into more complex ones. Every single one of these characters can have three other variations. One is the mid position, which is basically the same exact position. So it's a neutral sort of position to the actual form. Then you can have sort of a pyramid position, like so. So for example, if we scale our slanky structure on the X and Y axes, we get this type of shape, sort of a pyramid shape, which is again a very good primitive for female characters or characters that wear dresses. And we have the other shape that is going to be sort of a coffin shape. Now this shape is usually for characters who are, let's say, more masculine. You have the V shape, it's more aggressive, it's a different type of vibe. Now, moving further, we have our cube selection over here. And if we apply the same principle, we can get a cube that's a more pyramid shape. If you want to make a friendly type of boulder, and the wider top, which can be sort of a brainy type of head, or maybe a scientist's head, or another type of object that's usually associated with a more top-heavy structure. You can experiment with these shapes and see, for example, which of these shapes correlate to references in real life, which is extremely useful because after a while you start noticing that you can actually express yourself with really primitive shapes. Now, the next thing I usually look for is the subject organic or mechanic? So if it's mechanic, I usually keep the edges. So if I'm working with something, I maybe put a bevel, and with the bevel, I actually try to create some sort of mechanical structure, right? Or I try to create a more hard surface look. But if I have organic structures, I usually go with the rounder shape, which again can actually go into different directions. So if we move it over here, we can see this is our mid position. If we double this and we select just the bottom, so we have a more pyramid selection, you can see that it becomes like a chunkier type of bottom heavy cube, which is great for objects like bubbles or some types of fruit or potatoes, immediately correlated to something that is in real life. While on the other hand, if we move it like so, and then start to retract the bottom, make it really top heavy, like so, sort of a really cute strawberry, you can have it as a head. So you can use these positions to actually see what's gonna happen with your body. There's also the point where you can actually elongate these structures, so you can get capsule shapes. These are already a bit more advanced. So these are then the shapes that will influence further your character. In our case, we will be creating a bee exiting a beehive. Now, if we want to create a bee that it's cute, that it has that cute look, we need to use one of these shapes. Now, which one of these shapes should we use? Circular one or this one. We have two different selections. This one wouldn't necessarily work for a bee because bees, if you think about them in a cute manner, they would have to be sort of bottom heavy, chunkier. So we need a structure that is going to relate that to us. And the closest one is the sphere or the bottom heavy sphere. We can move these shapes out of our view so we can focus on these two. We can also move this one. We will keep them for later. Now we have to decide on which of these two shapes works for us. In our case, we need to think about what our bee anatomy is going to be. What we want to do is have an elongated body that's sort of chunky, almost like a bean type of structure. So with the bottom type of sphere, it's going to be a bit more difficult to create that feeling, so we can just move it away. We can use this simple mid sphere. Now we need to develop this sphere a bit more, so we would have to elongate it, we would have to choose some of the corners, bring them up, maybe put a loop cut into the middle, and then just draw it down. But this is kind of a solid sort of bee shape that we would need. Then we can play around. We can ask ourselves, okay, so we want maybe a bee with a bigger butt, for example. So it has like a huge butt where the stinger would be and the head is a bit smaller, because this is extremely important for our facial structure. When you have your basic body structure selected, you can start and work on your face. I try to apply the face as soon as possible on the primitive body so I get a feel for where the actual position is best. It can change, of course, through the animation. It can change, of course, through the course of the procedure. But again, it's extremely important that you keep this in mind so you can start at the beginning and then just work your way around that. With our basic spheres, so this is, for example, we're going to name this the bee. This is going to be our cute bee with our, let's say, front head and the back stinger. So the form, the shape is there. We need to create a face. Now, the usual way I create faces is just two spheres and one tube. Extremely simple, because the simplest you can get with a face, the easier it's going to be to convey some of the feelings. Now you might think to yourself, well, of course, but this is easy. This is just two spheres and a tube. Now we're going to go into the thick of it. So we're going to create a cube. So I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to subdivide it with Ctrl+2, so I get multiple subdivisions. I'm going to increase the render and viewport to 3, and I'm going to add a cast modifier with a factor of 1. So I get a perfect sphere. W to shade smooth, or F1 and search for shade smooth, and this is going to be my eye. Now at this point you can ask yourself, what should the eye be like, or what should the eye look like? You can help yourself with the, let's say, 3 category division. What I usually do is I select a mid position and then I do a bigger eye and a smaller eye. Now always do it in reference to the model. So for example, if this is, let's say, our bee, I try to look where the eyes are just too big to create a normal expression. I just press S to scale and then hold Control and start scaling it down until a point where it's almost like organic, where it almost feels like it's an organic eye. Now, when I have that shape, that's going to be my mid position shape. So now I can go two ways. I can duplicate this and I can go up. So this is going to be my bigger eye, and I can duplicate it, drop it down, and this is going to be my smaller eye. You can immediately see that it works really nicely with the shape of the front, so with the shape of the face. I'm going to move in sort of closer into the face. I'm just putting it randomly, though it's not a completely random procedure, and I'm just going to duplicate it and set it on the other side. Now you can see it's not looking, there's something really strange about it. It's not looking very, very good at the moment. That's because we still have to decide on the position of the eyes. This is as well another detail when it comes to facial expressions with very few elements. Every position counts. So every position tells what you want to tell with your character, with your facial expression. So let's think about RB. RB is a cute character, it's a worker, so we need sort of a innocence to it. Knowing that, we can now look at the positions. Now, if we change positions of our eyes to the middle or to the bottom, we can see that we immediately get a different feel for the character. So if we move them to the middle position, you can see that it's sort of like a neutral almost expression. If we move them to the top, it's again a completely different vibe to the character. You can almost see like a short snout coming out of here. Imagine the wings back. So it takes a lot to just try and position the eyes. You're not gonna know it immediately. You just have to try and test. But again, just try the three positions, the high, the middle, and the low. And once you decide on the position, or let's say you like the position that you're in, you can then try and remodel some stuff. Now that we have our position, for example, we're going to just leave them in the middle position like so. So this is going to be our middle position. Now we can start and look at the actual structure of the eyes. One very useful trick that's going to help you a lot is, first of all, we need to apply the subdivision of our character. So I'm going to go into the body and apply the subdivision. Then I'm going to choose one of the eyes. Then I'm just going to go under Object Constraints, and I'll be choosing the Shrink Wrap one. Target, I can click on the eyedropper and then just click on the object. And this is going to actually position the eye directly on my body. Now I can do the same with the other one, but I'll just delete it, select the previous eye, copy it, and just move it on the X-axis. I'll be moving them so they are sort of above this triangle over here, rather this junction over here. This, for example, would be sort of a wide position, right? If we move them a bit closer, so if we move them on the X-axis towards here, you can see that it's immediately changed the feel of the character. It's much bulkier, it's almost more childish. Though the size of the eyes is becoming a bit of a problem. So now we also need to correct that. It's a working process. You're trying to massage the character into existence. You're trying to massage the facial expressions into existence. So we can choose both of them. In the top corner, the transform, we can choose the individual origins. Now we can press S and just scale them separately. This is sort of a okay position for this one. Control A to reset the scale, and we change back to median point. This is the mid position of the distance between the two eyes. So we are in the middle of the face, in the middle of the distance between the two eyes. Now we can bring them closer. Let's say we bring them real close, like this. And this is, again, completely changing the vibe of the character. Another thing you can try, so you can see what's happening, is try moving them into a higher position. Now you can see, again, if you look the character outside, you can see that it's completely changing the feeling. It's like a sort of a innocent, almost like a cockroach type of thing. So it's not necessarily what we're looking for. Another thing we can try is we can look at the sides. So for example, let's say in this case, the forehead is going to be this part, but let's say move them down to the lower section. So this is now the forehead, and this is going to be where the face and everything comes, so it has a huge forehead. It's either like a brainy type of bee, but again, it has that young type of vibe to it. So we have to orient ourselves usually with these lines. So keeping your primitive body as low in poly count as possible will help you out greatly when you try to decide the position. And let's try a white position in the top. So we're going to do a white position in the top. Now this already looks sort of almost like a caterpillar. So this is not necessarily what we need. Let's move it down into the mid position. Yeah, so this is almost like a fish. So you can see how just the position changing from a high to a mid position changes the vibe of the character, even if we move them down. So this is again a brainier character. You have so many options just based on two factors, just the position of the eyes relative to the body and the position of the eyes relative to each other. Now let's try moving them again into the mid position, sort of about here. So we're looking at these lines over here. We're moving them, so let's try and see where they land. I'm just going to correct the position because it's not clipping completely correctly. So for example, this isn't a bad position. This is kind of sort of working with us. So a mid position may be better than a wide position. Let's move them up and let's see how this works. This isn't necessarily conveying the vibe of our character, so we move them down. Again, maybe for you it works. If it works for you, if you see that it works for you, try it out, do it. Let's move them back into the middle position. So basically now we have middle position relative to the body and the middle position in terms of distance between the eyes. And the size of the eyes is small. After we've done everything regarding that, so the eye position relative to the structure of the body, now we can introduce the mouth. And the mouth, again, is going to change a lot of things. Usually how I do the mouth is I pick a cylinder and I'm going to move it here. Now, as with the eyes, we have to create a size that's either big, medium, or small, relative to the body or relative to the eyes. Now, in this case, the eyes are your best bet. Now, how do we do this? Basically, what I do is I bring everything close to the eyes, like so. And then I try to match the diameter of the actual tube with the diameter of the eyes. Sort of like that. So that's going to be my middle position. Just eyeballing it, I'm not doing anything precise. It's just eyeballing a diameter for the eyes. So that could be my middle position. Now, the distance is also important. I'll be moving the mouth to about the middle position between the two eyes, and I'll be scaling it on the x-axis. So this is the longer length, this is a mid type of length, and this is a small or short mouth. What do we want to do? First of all, we're going to scale them so they are just between the eyes, like that. Okay? I'm going to move it so it gets close to the face so we can see what's happening with the body. And now we can try and we can scale them down to see if a thinner type of mouth is going to fit our character or a larger. Now, a larger one usually doesn't work really well on characters. It's better to go with a mid position that's slightly below the diameter of the eyes, or you can do them about half of the diameter between the eyes, like so. Now that we have our mouth size, we can try and see about our mouth length. We can try, let's say, a wider mouth, which is usually meant for characters that are verbal in a live situation. Or if you're thinking about making a character that's very talkative or very friendly, a bigger mouth is usually better for that. But in this case, we have a bee. Like we said before, bees are not so aggressive, they're innocent, they're hard workers. So maybe something in the mid position or even a small position. It's going to be in the middle position, Control R, and then I'm going to increase the loop counts to about 5 or 7. Let's say 7. I choose the face select tool and then just face select the two faces on each side. Now, when I have these selected, just go out of edit mode, Control A and reset the scale. Control B to bevel, and you have yourself a nice round mouth. Now you can see how much it actually changes the type of expression of our character. Again, if we move them slightly down, it's a completely different vibe. Let's move them closer in. We can again use the same trick with the object constraint. So having selected our mouth, we're going to select the shrink wrap, target, and we're going to select our B. So you have the lower position, the mid position, and the top position, which usually doesn't really work. So you can go with a really low position, like so. You can go with, let's say, lower position or a mid position. That's right in between the eyes, or let's say slightly below the eyes. We can use another really useful trick for frowning and for smiling. What I usually do is I add a modifier, the simple deform modifier, switch it to bend, rotate on the x-axis to about 90 degrees, and you can already see that we have like a really small type of smirk. I usually drive into about 70 degrees, so it's not an exaggerated smile, it's just a cute little smirk, because that usually really works with the characters. Because every change that you make, even the slightest possible change of angle in your character, is going to affect the perception of the character's mood. This is usually associated with younger characters, with more inexperienced characters, so this is going to work beautifully for us. Last thing we can do here is we can start and move the face around the body, now that we have a complete face. So we can have this guy, which is like sort of a fatter type of bee. He's like kind of lost in his thoughts, he's innocent, he's a bit lazy, he's a bit chunky. We can move it in the middle position again, which is like a very normal neutral bee, a neutral happy bee, or we can move it down and move this below, which is like sort of a brainiac bee, an older, possibly a slightly older bee. So it depends on what we want to convey. In this case, I think we can either decide on the top position or on the lower position. Because we will be doing a bee animation, or rather an animation of a bee exiting a beehive, I think it would be really appropriate to actually use a chunkier expression, because the bee is going to have trouble exiting the actual hive. In this case, we have our answer. We're going to use the top position relative to the body, with the eyes being in the middle position and the mouth being in the middle position between the eyes with a middle length. That's how you can use these. And last thing you can do for your mouth is basically you can create another, let's close this deform so we don't see what's happening. Let's add another simple deform bend, but in this case, we're gonna bend it down. What we can do here is we can basically apply these as shape keys. Now, if you don't know what shape keys are, it's a method of controlling and animating meshes. So let's apply this as a shape key. So it's going to return into its neutral position. And now if you go into our object data properties, we can see that we have under shape keys a simple deform. We can change that to smile, so we know that there is a smile, and we can increase the value like so. The best part is you can actually keyframe this, so you can actually animate a cute little smirk. The same goes with our frown. Apply a shape key, go into your object data properties, simple deform, and change to frown. And we have our frowning motion. And that's it. Basically, you have very basic smiling and frowning commands for your animation. We will do the blinking of the eyes, because that is a special category in itself when it comes to these characters, but we'll do that in the animation portion. So this is going to be it for this lesson. We have learned how to position and what types of positions we have to control when we're creating and conceptualizing our characters. So hopefully this was useful to you, and join us in the next one where we actually model our bee and start adding the hair. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.